I'm going to ask you to do something that might sound a little extreme. I'm going to ask you to start letting go of your stuff. Not everything, just more of it than you might think. And the reason has nothing to do with minimalism, nothing to do with saving money, and it certainly isn't about living in an empty house. The reason hit me yesterday morning. I was walking around my local car boot sale here in York like I do every Saturday, and I saw tables full of things people once cared about. Things they saved for, things they displayed proudly, things they couldn't imagine parting with, and now they're selling your memories for a pound. Now that's not a criticism of the sellers, it's a reminder. The house clearance people aren't selling possessions, they're selling the evidence that somebody was here. And what struck me wasn't the stuff as such, it was the fact that nobody knew who owned any of it. The objects survived, but the stories didn't. Nobody was standing there rummaging through this stuff saying, well, that belonged to Nick. He saved years to buy that. That was his favourite chair. Nobody knew, nobody cared. It was just stuff. And that's the moment it hit me. Most of us spend decades accumulating possessions, thinking that we're preserving memories, but memories don't live in possessions, they live in people, and people eventually leave. And it made me wonder if almost everything we own eventually ends up on a folding table somewhere like this, or worse, in the landfill, then what's actually worth keeping? And what should we let go of? Let's get into it. Let's talk about collections. Nobody wants your collections. This is a very hard truth. Coins, stamps, figurines, model cars, books, whatever your passion is. For me, football programmes. Hell, I've got hundreds of Leeds United football programmes from the 70s. I can't see my son wanting them. My watches, yes. Programmes, no. Things accumulate over decades. You see value, but your children see work. I've experienced this myself. My mother spent years building a collection of teapots. She knew every single piece. Every one of them had a story, a memory, a detail. She could tell you where she bought it and on which holiday and why it mattered. And after she died, I got rid of them all but one. I was there when she bought it. A teapot in the shape of a cruise ship. Here's what usually happens to your stuff. Your family calls a dealer. The dealer offers £100. Your family accepts, not because they're cruel or ungrateful, not because they never cared, but because they've no idea what else to do. Especially if they are over 60 themselves, which many of them are, and they've already started ditching their stuff. The value was never really in the objects. It was in the person who cared about them. And that might be difficult for you to accept, because you spend years building those collections without ever asking, who am I building them for? Let's talk about the stuff in the attic, or the garage, or the spare bedroom. You stop seeing it. The boxes, the cupboards, all that stuff. And at first, you do notice everything. You ignore exactly what you own, exactly where it is, exactly why you bought it. But after years and years of purchases and gifts, it all just becomes part of the background. The boxes become part of the wall. The cupboards become part of the room. The garage becomes just another storage unit that you just happen to own. And that's dangerous, because when you stop seeing things for what they really are, you stop questioning them. You stop asking questions like, do I still use this? Do I still need this? Do I even remember why I bought this? I think a lot of people after 60 aren't surrounded by things they love. They're surrounded by things they never got round to dealing with. And there's a big difference. One is a collection, the other is a delayed decision. And those delayed decisions have a habit of multiplying until one day you open a cupboard and you can't remember what half of it is even doing in there. It's easy to mistake possessions for identity. This is the deepest point in this video, because most people don't keep things because they're useful. They keep them because of what they represent. A different time in your life, a different version of yourself. Maybe a relationship, or I don't know, an achievement, a memory. The object becomes a container for the story. But here's the thing, the memory isn't in the thing. It's in you. When my father died, I kept his watch. The one his colleagues gave him after he retired from the police force with 30 years service. My father spent hours telling me stories about his days as a police constable on the beat with his truncheon and his whistle. catching thieves and robbers. His watch couldn't tell those stories. Neither could the photograph that I keep here on my side. The object isn't the memory, it's only the trigger. And once you understand that, you start realizing that letting go of an object doesn't mean letting go of the person. It doesn't mean you erase their memory. It doesn't erase the experiences you had with them, and it certainly doesn't erase the love. The important part was never the object. The important part was always the story. And if you do need a trigger, get a tattoo. That's what I did. Let's talk about the house clearance reality. This is the part you might not want to think about, but one day somebody else will have to deal with everything you own, and they won't see it the way you see it, not even your kids. Your house is going to need clearing whether you like it or not. So here's the brutal truth. Your stuff will be sorted into 3 piles: sellable, recyclable, disposable. And whoever does that, whether it be your kids or a professional house clearing service, they're not being cruel when they do that. They're being practical, because eventually every possession reaches the same question: does anybody actually want this? And that's a much harder question than most of us care to admit. And in a strange way, that's what a house clearance really is. It's the final separation between a life and the things that life accumulated. For decades, they belonged to someone. They sat in their house. They followed them through different chapters of their life. And then one day, the connection is broken. The person is gone. The things remain. And somebody else has to decide what happens next. And that's a sobering thought, but it's also a useful one, because it forces you to ask a simple question. Am I keeping this because it still adds value to my life? Or am I keeping it because I've never made a decision about it? Now, I should confess something. I didn't leave the car boot yesterday empty-handed. I bought something, a great big French ceramic pot for storing bread flour in. I've become slightly obsessed with sourdough bread making recently, and when I saw it, I thought to myself, that would be absolutely perfect for a 5-kilogram bag of flour. But here's the difference. I didn't buy it because it was cheap. It was 20 quid, by the way. I didn't buy it because it might be worth something one day. I bought it because I'll actually use it for a specific purpose. It supports something I actually enjoy doing. It earns its place, and that's the point. I'm not telling you to get rid of everything. I'm telling you to just be more intentional. Keep the things that serve your life, the things you definitely use, the things you absolutely do love, the things that still have a purpose, and let the rest go. The question nobody asks: what happens if I die tomorrow? I know, it's not a comfortable question. Some of you will say I'm being morbid, especially my wife, but I think it's a useful question because it changes how you look at your possessions. Would somebody have to spend weeks clearing your house, sorting boxes, opening those cupboards up, making thousands of small decisions? Keep, sell, donate, bin? Or have you already done most of that hard work yourself? The greatest gift you can leave your children isn't more stuff. It's fewer problems to deal with after you die. Fewer boxes to sort, fewer digital files to look at, fewer weekends spent clearing attics, garages and cupboards. That's not morbid. That's being kind and considerate. That's thinking ahead. And the older I get, the more important that feels. I'm thankful that my mum did that for me. It's challenging enough losing your last parent without having the constant reminder that you'll never see them again. This is the payoff, because when you watch a video like this, you might think it's about sacrifice. It isn't. It's about freedom. Less stuff means less maintenance, less storage, less cleaning, less organising, less worrying, less mental load. It means a garage you can actually park your car in, a spare room that isn't a storage unit, maybe it's now a gym, cupboards that open without things falling out. Now I know that sounds small, but it doesn't feel small. It feels like breathing room. It feels lighter, calmer, simpler. And after 60, I've come to believe that freedom is often not about adding more things to your life. It's about removing the things that no longer belong there. Let me make this point. The car boot sale wasn't depressing, it was clarifying, because it reminded me that the value of our lives were never sitting on those tables. The value was in the people, the experiences, the walks, the conversation, the lessons, and more importantly, the memories. Those are the things that are really worth protecting, Not because they last forever, because clearly they don't. And next weekend, there'll be another car boot sale and I'll be there. There'll be another house that's been cleared. Another lifetime of possessions will be dumped into old boxes that once stored bananas and vegetables. And people will rummage through them without ever knowing the story. Which is why I'm increasingly convinced of this. The thing worth protecting was never, ever the stuff itself. Because eventually, somebody will sell that stuff. What remains are the stories. So here's my question for you. What's the one thing you've kept for years that you know you probably don't need anymore? Let me know in the comments. And if this video resonated with you, you might want to watch this one next. It's 6 things you absolutely should buy after 60. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.